everyone, my name is Caitlin Wood. Today during this presentation, we will be learning about the vaping effects on teenagers. Goals. So my goal for this presentation, my personal goal, is to raise awareness on the risk and consequences of vaping in teenagers. I will conduct research and present the information to encourage healthier lifestyle changes. My teaching goal for this presentation is to educate teenagers about the health risk of vaping by presenting evidence-based information on the negative health effects of vaping and encourage a healthier lifestyle. By the end of this presentation, at least 80% of students will be able to correctly identify at least 3 health risks of vaping. Objectives. By the end of this presentation, I would like all students to understand what is vaping, what are the health risks, marketing and misinformation of vaping companies, peer pressure and decision-making strategies for teens being pressured to vape, and resources for help. So, introduction. According to the CDC, in 2024, e-cigarettes were the most commonly used tobacco product among middle and high school students in the United States. There has been a significant rise in the usage of e-cigarettes or vapes in teenagers ages 14 to 18 years old. Most are unaware of the negative and long-term side effects of using an e-cigarette. Many teens feel like that they're a better option than regular cigarettes. E-cigarettes have detrimental side effects that can lead to long-term health effects and are not better than regular cigarettes. So, e-cigarette history. E-cigarettes were introduced to the United States in 2007. Their original purpose of an e-cigarette was used as a tobacco cessation tool. It was considered to be a safer alternative than smoking. Older versions closely resembled cigarettes and cigars. Many have evolved into a mod system. We now know that e-cigarettes are not considered a safer alternative, and they have led to an increased number of teens vaping. So some e-cigarette statistics. In 2024, 2.25 million middle and high school students reported current use on one or more days during the past 30 days of any tobacco product, compared to 2.80 million in 2023. 5.9% of middle and high school students, which is 1.63 million, reported current use of an e-cigarette. 7.8%, or 1.2 million, high school students and 3.5%, or 410,000, middle school students reported the use of e-cigarettes. The most commonly used device among current e-cigarette users was a disposable, which was 55.6%, followed by pre-filled or refillable pods or cartridges, which was at 15.6%. So what is vaping? Vaping is the inhaling of an aerosol or mist created by an electronic cigarette or an e-cigarette. Vapes are powered by a battery. The vape heats the liquid until it becomes an aerosol that is inhaled. Devices can be disposable, or they can be refillable and rechargeable. So common brands: Elf Bar, Juul, Inokin, Smoke, Blue, UL, Views, Puff. Go back to that picture. So you can just kind of see some of the different brands and kind of how they've evolved. They used to look more like a cigarette, and now it's just kind of like a little pod system. So what is in an e-cigarette? Contrary to what you believe, the liquid in vapes is not just water vapor. The e-juice that refills e-cigarette cartridges usually contains nicotine, which is extracted from tobacco, propyl glycol, flavorings, and other chemicals. Studies have found that even e-cigarettes claiming to be nicotine-free contain trace amounts of nicotine. Additionally, when the e-liquid heats up, more toxic chemicals are formed. So what's in an e-cigarette continued. Nicotine is highly addictive and it is one of the main ingredients in these e-cigarettes. Propionyl glycol is used as a food additive. It's used in food additives, pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, and in vapes for flavoring purposes. Carcinogens have also been found in these vapes and are known to cause cancer. Some vapes may even have THC or CBD oil in them as well. So here's just a little picture from the CDC. This is substances in an e-cigarette aerosol. So we've got volatile organic compound, flavorings, ultrafine particles. You've got your nicotine, your cancer-causing chemicals, and also heavy metals such as nickel, tin, and lead have also been found in these e-cigarettes aerosol. So, cannabis vapes. As these vapes have become more and more popular, there has also been a rise in THC being added into these vape devices. Short-term marijuana use can impact your short-term memory. It can lead to poor school performance, slower reaction times when driving, increased anxiety and paranoia. Long-term chronic use can lead to higher dropout rates and amotivational syndrome, which makes it hard for someone to accomplish any desired goals academically or professionally that they may have. Synthetic forms of marijuana like Delta 8 are also being used in these vaping devices. These can be very dangerous and they can lead to increased anxiety. Delta 8 has also been known to lead to psychosis in adolescents. So here's a picture, say no to cannabis and vapes. So, heavy metal exposure from vapes. Several popular e-cigarette devices expose users to at least a dozen toxic metals in dangerous concentrations, according to a new study by researchers in the Department of Environmental Health and Engineering. Nickel, chromium, lead, manganese, and arsenic are some of the metals that have been found in these vaping devices. So, how are heavy metals dangerous? Heavy metals in these vapes can increase your risk of cancer. They can also cause neurological, renal, cardiovascular, and hepatic damage. So they can alter your brain. They can alter your kidneys, your heart, your liver. There's all kinds of damage that can be done from this heavy metal exposure. Cognitive impairment, behavioral disturbances, and respiratory complications are linked to heavy metal exposures from e-cigarette devices. So, types of vapes. We have disposable vapes, cig-alikes, pod systems, vape pens, vape mods, pod mods. Each type of the vape has some form of a pod for the e-liquid to be stored in. It also is going to have a power source like a battery to keep it, to run it. It's going to have a heating element and a mouthpiece. So types of e-cigarettes. Cig-alikes, you can see that very much looks like a normal regular cigarette, which is kind of what they originally started off looking like because their intention originally was to be used as a tobacco cessation tool. You've got a vape pen, so just a slender design, kind of looks like a writing pen. Vape pod or pod kits. So you can see the little pod. Here is your little system that it would go into, and then here is it all put together. There's your pod mod, and then here is your box or your vape mod. So it's more of a bigger design. How does it work? In many e-cigarettes, puffing will activate the battery-powered heating device, which vaporizes the liquid in the cartridge or reservoir. That person then inhales that, resulting in aerosol or vapor, which is called vaping. So here we've got another picture. You can see your mouthpiece here. Then you've got your cartridge that contains your nicotine in a chemical solution of propionyl glycol or glycerin and water. Then you have your heating element, which vaporizes your liquid to deliver the nicotine straight into the lungs as you're inhaling or as the smoker inhales. atomizer, your battery, your microprocessor, which activates the LED, and the LED is illuminating on this one particularly as you inhale. So why is vaping becoming so popular in teens? E-cigarettes are becoming increasingly popular in teenagers. Social media platforms are a big reason for this increase. On many different platforms, teens are being exposed to tobacco as ads on social media. In 2019, as many as 3/4 of teens were exposed to e-cigarette marketing, one nationwide study found. These advertisements are usually eye-catching for adolescents, featuring young people vaping a variety of devices with trendy shapes, vivid colors, and endless flavors. So, what are some of the reasons teens say that they started to vape? The most common reason was to experiment, which was 53% of teens, followed by taste, which was 37.2%, and boredom was 23.5%. To have a good time was 22.4%, and to relax was 21.6%. Less common reasons were because it looked cool, which was 13.7%, and to feel good or get high was 8.3%. Reasons pertaining to regular cigarette use included to quit regular cigarettes, which was 7.3%, and because regular cigarette use is not permitted was 6.1%. Were not common. And then the least common reason reported was being hooked, which was 1.1%. So, are these vapes safer than cigarettes? E-cigarettes were originally created to be used by people who smoked cigarettes to help with tobacco cessation, which means these people were trying to stop smoking cigarettes, traditional cigarettes, and would try a vaping device to see if that would just lead to them completely quitting altogether. Vapes are not safer than cigarettes. Vapes still contain nicotine, which is detrimental to teenage brain development. Nicotine is very addictive. Vapes also contain harmful chemicals that can lead to cancer or other health problems. Heavy metals are found in these vape devices and are highly toxic to the body. Like we said, we were talking about the heavy metals earlier. It can lead to neurological, hepatic, renal, and cardiovascular issues as well. So it's not just your lungs that can be damaged by these harmful devices. So, how do e-cigarette companies use advertisement on social media? Social media is not regulated like television. E-cigarette companies can advertise, they can offer coupons, and they can even do giveaways for these devices. Companies may even collaborate with influencers, athletes, musicians, and celebrities to increase their popularity of their device. Because of the rise in teens using social media, there has also been an increase in teens being exposed to vaping products. So, one in particular brand that kind of led to an epidemic in teens vaping was Juul. So how did Juul lead to an increase in teens vaping? One brand in particular that led to an epidemic of teens vaping is the brand Juul. Juul was launched in the United States in 2015, but it grew very popular in 2017. In 2018, the FDA started an investigation into the Juul Labs company because of its marketing practices. They were accused of marketing their products to youth. 11 states, including North Carolina, reached a settlement with Juul over the advertising accusations. Juul agreed to pay $40 million to settle this case, stating that it would not sell its flavor cartridges unless authorized by the FDA. So here's one of the advertisements where you can see vaporized Juul on Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon. So they're just out here reaching out to these adolescents, marketing to them, which led to an epidemic of teens vaping. So it purchased advertising space on youth websites like Nickelodeon, the Cartoon Network, and also in 17 magazine. Companies like Juul are guilty of advertising directly to young children and teens. peer pressure. How does peer pressure influence teenagers to begin vaping? One of the most common reasons for increase in teens vaping is peer pressure. Teens are being pressured by their friends to begin vaping. They're also wanting to maintain a cool social image. According to Groom, the most common source for getting e-cigarettes is a friend followed by a family member. So, how can we say no to vaping peer pressure? Have a way out. By this, extracurricular activities after school to remove yourself from people who may want to pressure you to vape. Number 2, say no with confidence. It is not always easy, but know your boundaries. A firm no gets your point across that you are not interested in trying anything. Number 3 is find your tribe. It is hard to say no to friends, but the right friend group will not pressure you to do anything that you don't want to do or something that could cause harm to your body. So stand up to others. If you see someone else is being pressured and you know that this is not right, stand up for that person. Let them know that this is not right and it's not cool to try to pressure someone into something that is harmful. So get help and some advice. If you're ever in a situation where that you are feeling pressured by someone to try something, whether it be e-cigarettes or just something that you're not interested in or something you know is harmful, reach out to someone for advice. A parent, a teacher, other friends can reassure you that you're making the right choice so that you do not fall victim to being peer pressured. So, flavors are one of those big percentages that led to teens trying a vape. So, how do flavors influence teens to vape? There are fruit flavors like strawberry, blueberry, pineapple, mango, peach, and plenty more fruity flavors. There are also mint flavors like peppermint and menthol. There are tobacco flavors, candy flavors. E-cigarette companies use the flavorings that increase usage in teens. So, why do youth vape? Advertising. Like we said, social media is not regulated like television. So kids are seeing these ads. They're also seeing these giveaways and these influencers who are promoting these devices. And many people are influenced by influencers nowadays to try something just because they're promoting it and they say it's cool, they say it's worth it. So, also flavors. Cherry flavors, fruity flavors, candy flavors, all these flavors are enticing to teens to want to reach out and try these devices. Social influences, so like we said, friends, even some family members may peer pressure you into trying these vape devices. And nicotine. Some teens who have already tried other cigarettes or other tobacco devices may be addicted to nicotine, and which is why they end up vaping. Nicotine is very addictive, but it's also very harmful to our bodies as well. So, short-term effects on vaping or from vaping. Coughing, shortness of breath, eye irritation, headaches, a dry, irritated mouth and throat, nausea. So these are just kind of some of those short-term effects that you're probably most familiar with, because when everybody thinks of a vaping device, they think of coughing and lung trouble. But you see that they're also having eye irritation, headaches, dry mouth and throat, and even nausea from these vape devices. Long-term effects, dependence or addiction. To an adolescent, vaping is harmful to brain development. Long-term respiratory problems like emphysema are a big issue from these vape devices. Permanent lung damage. Aortic stiffness, so even trouble with your heart, going back to that cardiovascular damage from these vape devices. Increased arteriosclerosis, so here we go again, not just our lungs that are being affected, total body damage from these vape devices. So here's a picture. It's got your e-cigarette aerosol and it's showing you your lungs. So pulmonary effects, short term. increased flow resistance, increased airway reactivity. Long-term, emphysema, higher airway resistance, airway obstruction, and airway inflammation. Cardiovascular, so our heart. Short-term, increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, and increased aortic stiffness. Long-term, we're still seeing that increased aortic stiffness and also increased arteriosclerosis. So not just our lungs that are affected. Here's another picture, another immediate versus long-term. So it may create some relaxation immediately, but it's also going to cause some mouth and airway irritation, a persistent cough, poison from e-cigarette liquid if swallowed, chest pain, some gastro side effects, nausea and vomiting. One thing that may also happen is an e-cigarette may overheat or explode. Long term, in the brain, we've got some dependence and harm to a developing adolescent brain. Respiratory breathing problems, permanent lung damage due to these e-cigarettes or vaping products, death due to lung damage. It can be a tool to help people for quitting who are dependent on cigarettes, although the evidence for this is still very weak. Most still end up dependent on this vape device rather than just a regular cigarette. So, side effects of vaping in teenagers. It's harmful to your brain development. Addiction and dependency. It is easily and quickly to be developed an addiction to these devices. Problems with concentrating, which could lead to poor academic or poor professional goals that you may have. Anxiety, mood disorders, sleep disturbance, a chronic cough and congestion, so you may constantly stay coughing and you may always be congestion and dealing with some of that sinus trouble. Mouth, nose, and throat irritation. Any kind of irritation in our body is inflammation, and so inflammation in our body can also lead to cancer developing in our mouth and throat areas. So that's another thing to be aware of. How does vaping affect brain development? Nicotine affects several parts of the brain. It affects your reward process of your brain and your executive function. The reward process of the brain is the central component of our motivational system. It's what guides our behavior towards a positive reward and helps us to stay away from negative ones. The executive function is essential for actions, controlling our thoughts, our emotions, and managing our own thoughts. When nicotine reaches the brain, it affects the reward process of our brain into thinking that nicotine is a positive reward and not a negative one. Our brain continues to develop into our mid-20s. Using nicotine while your brain is still developing has long-term effects. It dysregulates normal brain activity that controls our attention, our impulse, our moods, and our reward process. There's the source. Mood disorders and anxiety from vaping. Many teenagers in their middle and high school years are already very stressed and under a lot of pressure. They may also already have some anxiety and maybe some mood disorders going on. Academic challenges, peer pressure, and hormonal changes can all contribute to anxiety. In teenagers who are using a vape device, that nicotine in that vape can worsen your symptoms of anxiety and depression. E-cigarette users are more likely to experience increased depressive symptoms like crying spells and sadness. They also double the risk of being diagnosed with depression compared to a teenager who has never vaped. E-cigarettes will also double the risk of developing ADHD. Trouble with your memory, your concentration, and decision making are all symptoms of using a vape device while you're an adolescent or teenager. So how does vaping impact our sleep? Vapes are associated with sleep problems. Sleep problems that may occur include insufficient sleep, restlessness, interrupted sleep, nightmares, and sleepiness during the day. sleep is essential for a teenager's brain development. Poor sleep quality is associated with negative mental health. So we already know that a teenager who uses a vape device is more at risk of developing anxiety and depression. So when you also are and poor brain development. So when these vape devices also affect our sleep, you're just constantly beating up your brain, and it has negative effects on your mental health. Here's just a picture showing some frustration. So what is E-Valley? E-Valley stands for e-cigarette or vaping product use associated lung injury. It is a lung disease that develops from vaping. The symptoms of E-Valley include shortness of breath, cough, chest pain, fever, chills, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, a rapid heartbeat, and rapid breathing. Your treatment for E-Valley includes corticosteroids, oxygen through a nasal cannula, antibiotics, and antivirals. So E-Valley continued. A study was conducted on 14 patients in 2019 who were diagnosed with E-Valley. Respiratory symptoms occurred in 64%. GI symptoms like that nausea and vomiting occurred in 57%. Fever in 78%. Neurological symptoms in 15%. And other constitutional symptoms in 50%. 35% of these patients presented with no respiratory symptoms. So there's that misconception that people have that they think vapes and traditional cigarettes cause only lung and respiratory issues. These patients were showing up, 35% of them, with no respiratory symptoms. The study found that the lungs are certainly involved in vaping-associated illness, but other organ systems may provide that insight into pathophysiology of the disease. Lung injury was usually incidentally discovered when these patients were being diagnosed. Most had other symptoms that led to a full workup, like abdominal pain and vomiting. While lung injury is a part of the case definition, lung injury is often accompanied by and may be eclipsed in the severity by other symptoms, such as abdominal pain and vomiting. In fact, in this series, lung injury was occasionally discovered as an incidental finding in the course of exploring other symptoms. So this is a picture of an E-Valley CT on an 18-year-old. There's 3 different CT x-rays. So in picture A, this is the posterior-anterior radiograph that shows the mid-lung and lower lung consolidation and opacity bilaterally, so on both sides. Small right pleural infusion, which is the black arrowhead, and septal thickening, which is your white arrowheads, are seen. There is conspicuous sparing of cardiac borders, which are some of the white arrows. So picture B, coronal and C sagittal oblique images from the CT nicely illustrate radiographic findings with mild and lower lung predominant ground glass opacity with few areas of consolidation. Prominent subpleural and perilobular sparing is present in the black arrows. In addition, there's conspicuous sparing of periobronchiovascular interstitum, best illustrated around larger pulmonary arteries and veins, which are the white arrows. In addition to thickening of the interlobular septa, there are a few areas with thickening of intralobular septa, creating a crazy paving pattern, which is the black arrowheads. And then picture D is 3 days after initiation of steroids. The patient showed dramatic clinical and radiographical improvement. So, everybody's probably heard of popcorn lungs. You've probably seen it on the news when it's associated with vaping. So popcorn lungs is a nickname for bronchiolitis obliterans. It is a serious, irreversible lung disease. It is caused by inhaling diacetyl. When inhaling diacetyl, it causes a scarring of the air sacs in the lungs. It results in thickened and narrowed airways. The nickname popcorn lungs was given to bronchiolitis obliterans because decades ago, diacetyl was an ingredient in major popcorn manufacturers. Workers were breathing in this harmful ingredient, and there were hundreds of cases and even death caused by bronchiolitis obliterans. The companies have now removed the ingredient from these products. Even though diacetyl is known to cause popcorn lungs, it is still found in many e-cigarette flavors. Symptoms of popcorn lungs include coughing, wheezing, shortness of breath, chest pain, and chest tightening. Popcorn lungs continued. It is irreversible and a chronic condition. Treatments may slow the progression and reduce severity of the symptoms. Corticosteroids like prednisone are the most common treatment for popcorn lungs. An inhaler like albuterol is also used to dilate those bronchial tubes. Oxygen may also be prescribed to increase those blood oxygen levels. So here we have a picture of a normal bronchial. Here is the one with popcorn lungs. Up above, you can also see popcorn lung that shows your trachea, your bronchus, your bronchiole, and your lungs. And so that little squared on that box, that little square box on that lung is what we're zooming in on. Here's what a normal bronchiole should look like, and here's what a popcorn lung looks like. So we can see some thickening and some inflammation. You can also see the bumps and ridges as well. So we have a YouTube video on popcorn lungs.
In tonight's Health Watch, more disturbing news about the dangers of vaping.
Doctors believe they discovered a new type of lung injury related to vaping. Dr. Max Gomez here to tell us the story of a teenager who had something called popcorn lung. Doctor, that's right, and it's called popcorn lung because it was first found in workers in a microwave popcorn factory who breathed in the flavoring used in the product. But this young man's lung damage was likely caused by vaping flavored THC-containing products. Meanwhile, vaping-related injuries in the U.S. number more than 2,200, with 47 deaths. By the time the 17-year-old boy was admitted to an ICU in Ontario, Canada this past spring, what had started as a bad cough had developed into a life-threatening illness.
He was on life support, and we were concerned that he might not survive.
Dr. Karen Bosma, who treated the patient, says his lung images didn't follow the usual pattern of vaping-related lung injury that has emerged in recent months, particularly in the United States.
He had a diffuse pattern. So if you picture the branches of a tree in the springtime when a tree is budding, that's what we were seeing on these images of the CT scan. And that's a pattern that is in keeping with damage.
Doctors diagnosed a type of lung injury known as bronchiolitis, also known as popcorn worker's lung. Small airways in the lungs become so inflamed and obstructed they can't expel carbon dioxide, which can then build up to toxic levels. Popcorn lung is different from the type of injury typically seen in vaping-related illnesses, where the damage occurs in the tiny air sacs or alveoli at the end of the airway. New York State investigators are testing vaping devices to see which compounds may be causing the lung illness. The Centers for Disease Control has identified vitamin E acetate as one culprit, but experts doubt that's the only one.
We absolutely continue to look for everything. We have not just said, okay, we have found vitamin E acetate. We will continue to analyze and tease apart whatever chemicals are in the samples.
And meanwhile, the e-cigarette industry is pushing back against the total ban that's being proposed at state, local, and national levels. They say that the vast majority of vaping injuries are linked to black market THC products. They point out that in the UK, where e-cigarettes are encouraged for smoking
So these
cessation,
companies, they're
there have
trying
been
to
no
just like cover it up and
vaping-related
say
deaths.
that
So
no, that it's
we
not
still have a
causing
lot more to
damage,
find
even
out
though
about
those
what's causing it
ingredients
and how
are
to prevent
known
it. Sure sounds like
to
a
cause
doctor.
toxic
Thank you.
lungs. So, how does vaping affect our heart health? We know that vaping can affect our lungs, but it can also damage our heart. Vaping increases the risk of heart attack and stroke in healthy children and teens. Vaping can lead to high blood pressure, increased heart rate, released adrenaline, hyperinflammatory responses, and also arterial stiffness. So, some dental concerns as well in these teens who vape. You're at an increased risk of developing gingivitis. You're also at an increased risk of developing periodontal disease. Reduced saliva, increased tooth decay, increased oral mucosa lesions, higher risk of poor oral hygiene habits. So next is going to be some images of these dental and oral concerns in patients who vape. So, just starting off right here, you can see some inflammation. You can also see some puffiness of the gingiva or the gums with the teeth. You can also see an increased buildup, stain, and that very front tooth we can see is decayed. This picture right here is demonstrating some inflammation, some periodontal disease, so gum disease in these patients who vape. You can see the normal tooth where it goes and it's white, but you see that darkened yellowy brown, and you see how it goes down into the gum. That's calculus or tartar, which leads to that increased risk of periodontal disease. Image number 2, you can see a lot of gingival overgrowth, some puffiness, some stain, seeing some more of that tartar buildup. So most likely this patient has some periodontal disease related to the vaping. Next, you can see on the palate, nicotine stomatitis. So yes, when you go to your dental office, you see your hygienist or your dentist. If you are a vapor or a smoker, they can tell by your palate. It is going to show that nicotine stomatitis in the roof of your mouth. So, how does vaping increase dental concerns? The vaping juice contains nicotine as well as other ingredients that are harmful to your teeth and your oral tissue. This nicotine constricts blood flow to the gums. It can lead to the inability to fight infection and to repair connective tissue. Because of this, there is an increased chance of tooth loss and gum disease. Another ingredient in vape juice is the propionyl glycol. This can lead to dry mouth, which can lead to cavities and gum disease. When it is inhaled, it can break down into an acid that damages enamel. Vegetable glycerin is also an ingredient in vape juice. It is sticky and it is a sweetener in the vaping juice. It allows oral bacteria to stick to the grooves of the teeth, leading to an increased number of cavities, and it also causes the growth of our oral biofilm. So, we know that there is total body issues with our lungs, our cardiovascular system, our brain development. It can affect our teeth, total body health. But there is also a burn risk from vaping. Vape batteries can explode and they can cause burns to the body. They can explode in the pockets, in your hand, or at your face when you're inhaling. Commonly burned areas include the face, the hand, the thighs, and even the genitals. The burns are typically a second-degree burn. Moreover, in 2016 alone, an estimated 1,007 e-cigarette burn injuries were treated in the emergency departments across the United States. So, Burn risk from vapes continued. Vape battery explosions have also resulted in injuries to the face, the eyes, the hands, the mouth, and in your mouth you can have broken or missing teeth and lacerations. It has also resulted in broken neck bones. In 2018, the first death from a vape explosion was reported. Shrapnel entered the person's brain, and unfortunately, this resulted in that person dying. So, here's an image. You can see that there is some tooth loss and some laceration. Image number 2. This shows a very, very bad burn to the thigh from an explosion of a vape device. And image number 3, we've got another mouth injury. I can see that there is some teeth missing and there is a huge oral lesion in that gum. There is a lot of bleeding and it looks like maybe the lip is even torn from the explosion. So, death is possible from a vape explosion. Here's another video.
Right now, a man is dead in St. Petersburg after firefighters say his vape pen exploded. Firefighters tell us that the victim has several facial injuries, and News Channel 8's Gabrielle Shirley has more now from St. Pete.
Rod, a neighbor, had to walk across the street to this home here behind me to identify the body of the 38-year-old victim.
He was a nice guy, you know, very friendly, outgoing, just a nice neighbor. You said hello to.
Dale Kleine has lived across the street from the Delia family for years.
We know his parents a little bit more than we know him because they've lived there a lot longer than he has.
She says the son, Wake, lives in the home alone. His parents own it. She started to worry when she saw the smoke coming from the roof.
We were just hoping that nobody was home, but then we found out that Wake was home.
Then she had to do the unthinkable. Identify a body.
I don't know that you can even describe it. It's just something that, you know, they needed somebody to do it because, there was nobody else around. His parents weren't around, so I said I would do it.
Lieutenant Stephen Lawrence with St. Petersburg Fire Rescue says a vape pen had exploded on the second floor, injuring Delia's face and sparking a fire.
They have lithium batteries in them themselves, and the batteries, it's called a runaway. They start to heat up, and they heat up too quickly or too much, and then they start off gas, and then that gas would then ignite or explode.
Lieutenant Lawrence has seen it in the past, and now this neighbor is reminding everyone to think twice.
These things are not as safe as they think they are.
We are waiting on an autopsy to determine if the vape pen explosion killed this man or if the vape pen explosion knocked him unconscious, trapping him in the fiery room. I am also working to learn what type of vape pen he was using. I'm reporting here in St. Petersburg. Gabrielle Shirley, News Channel 8.
Now, to avoid a vaping tragedy, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration has some tips that you need to keep in mind. Don't charge your vape with a phone or a tablet. Replace the batteries in your vape if they're damaged or wet. Don't charge them overnight. Protect from extreme temperatures and store all loose batteries for your vape in a case and keep them away from metal objects.
Let that get back going. I think the best advice is just to never pick up a vape and never start, and you'll never have to worry about death from a vape explosion or a vape fire. So, e-cigarettes and addiction in teens. E-cigarette use in teens is very high. E-cigarettes, more often than not, can lead to a higher rate of teens using other forms of tobacco. E-cigarettes typically contain nicotine. It is hard to find an e-cigarette device that is nicotine-free. Nicotine is a highly addictive ingredient in e-cigarettes. When a teen inhales vapor laced with nicotine, the drug is quickly absorbed through the blood vessels in the lining in the lungs. It reaches the brain in about 10 seconds. There, nicotine particles fit lock and key into a type of acetylcholine receptor located on the neurons or the nerve cell throughout the brain. So, continued e-cigarette and addictions in teens. Teens who smoke e-cigarettes or vapes are more likely to smoke cigarettes or marijuana. The University of Michigan conducted a study of teens using e-cigarettes and the likelihood of them using e-cigarettes and marijuana. To that end, researchers examined data from 12 to 25-year-olds over an 8-year period. They found that those who vape were more likely to start smoking cigarettes, using marijuana, or even starting other drugs during that study period. The study found that teens ages 12 to 17 years old that vaped and used other tobacco were 54 times likelier to start smoking cigarettes, 8 times more likely to start using marijuana, and 3 times more likely to start using other drugs. So are vapes without nicotine safe? Vaping with a vape that does not contain nicotine is still not safe. Vapes with nicotine will not result in a nicotine addiction, but the other ingredients are still harmful. Nicotine-free vapes still contain that diacetyl, which is known to cause popcorn lungs, heavy metals, and other volatile organic compounds. Diacetyl is linked to lung disease, popcorn lungs, that bronchiolitis obliterans. Heavy metals are linked to cancer and can affect the neurological, cardiovascular, renal, and hepatic systems. So, FDA regulations on vaping. Under the federal law, consumers must be 21 or older to buy vape products or tobacco products. The FDA regulates the manufacture, import, packaging, labeling, advertising, promotion, sale, and distribution of ends and their components. This includes the e-liquid, the vials that contain e-liquid, the cartridges, the flavor, certain batteries, and even the software. Vape manufacturers cannot market products without FDA authorization. The FDA did not have the authority to regulate them until 2016. So, how can our schools regulate vaping? In Georgia, 139 of 181 school districts have adopted the 100% tobacco-free school policy, protecting 1,580,192 students from the dangers and harms of secondhand smoke and aerosol exposure. Schools can regulate vaping by implementing this tobacco-free policy. Schools may also provide vaping prevention education. They may also offer cessation resources like the Georgia Tobacco Quit Line. Parents and teachers also need to be educated because some vaping devices do not just look like a cigarette or a cigar. They also may look like a USB drive. Some look like a slender pen. Some parents are not aware that these devices can look like that, so they may see them and think nothing of them. So it's important that the parents as well as teachers also have some education on these vaping devices. School policies and regulations. Vaping on school campuses may result in severe punishment. First-time punishment for vaping could just be a verbal warning. Schools may also require counseling or provide some type of education on the risk of vaping. Repeated violators may have suspension or expulsion. Suspension is usually for a few days to a week, and schools can choose to allow these students who are suspended to make up their missed work. They may also choose to not allow the students to make up their missed work. Expulsion is a withdrawal from the school. It could be a set period of time, or it could even be permanently. How can parents help? Parents can help teens with quitting e-cigarette use. It is important for parents to be supportive in helping their children. Ask questions like, what made you want to start? Are you stressed? Could I help make quitting easier for you? Be patient. Withdrawal from these tobacco devices can cause irritability, so it is important to be understanding during this time. Help remove that temptation. Start by getting rid of all vaping devices and products. Create a plan of action. Talk with children on how to manage these temptations and remove themselves from peers who may vape. Help teens find help. Online sources may be beneficial to helping teens with cessation. It's important for parents and teachers to be supportive during this time to help these students feel like there's someone there to help them quit and to get rid of this bad habit. So some sources for teenagers: the Georgia Tobacco Line, which is 1-800-QUIT-NOW or 1-800-270-7867. There's also the This Is Quitting app. Teens can join this app by texting Ditch Vape to 88709. Smoke Free Text for Teens. To sign up for this one, you're going to text QUIT to 478-848. Another app is also the Quit Start app. So the Georgia Tobacco Line. The Georgia Tobacco Line is a free public health service available to help Georgians quit smoking, vaping, and stop using all forms of tobacco products. You're going to text READY to 34191. You can enroll online at quitnow.net. It is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, including holidays. You must be 13 years old and older to sign up. They provide telephone, text, and web-based services. And if someone is looking for the Georgia Tobacco Line, here is that number again, open 24/7. When you're ready, we can help. And it says quit smoking. This is Quitting. It's a free program. You're going to text QUIT to 202-899-7550. Teens will receive messages about helping with tobacco cessation. Has real stories from young adults who quit vaping. It's got fun GIFs posts about quitting, so it's just a good way, especially for teenagers and adolescents, young adults who are trying to quit. Sometimes we kind of laugh and have to laugh through the darkness, so these GIF posts are kind of helping to motivate everybody to quit. You have access to counseling 24/7 as well with This Is Quitting. And here's their information again. Smoke-free text for teens. This one, let's see. There we go. There's what it looks like. It's a free texting program through Smoke Free Teen, which is a program offered by the National Institute of Health. You can join by texting QUIT to 47848. And this is what it's going to look like. Quit Start. This is an app for teen smokers and e-cigarette users. The app has tips, inspiration, and challenges. Teens using this app can also track their progress and can earn badges for tobacco-free milestones. It is completely free to join. There is what Quit Start looks like. So, in conclusion, vaping poses serious negative health effects on teenagers. It can impact physical health, mental health, and academic performance. The harmful ingredients in vaping devices can lead to respiratory issues, nicotine dependency, and long-term effects on the body. It has been linked to anxiety, depression, and cognitive impairment. Despite the misconception that vaping is safer than regular cigarettes, the risk of adolescent development are significant. To protect the health of teens, it is important to raise awareness of the dangers of e-cigarettes, continue to enforce strict regulations, and to encourage healthier lifestyle choices. So these next 2 pages are my references. I hope by listening to this presentation that you now know the dangers of vaping and that vaping devices are not safer than traditional cigarettes. In fact, they are all detrimental to the body, especially as a young teen. It is detrimental to your brain that is still developing into your 20s. So I hope by listening to this presentation that you are well aware of all of the long-term, short-term effects. I hope that you know that you can reach out to parents and teens and parents and friends and teachers for help, and that you're not alone in this. So thank you for your time today.